There was something you said, and something I thought about recently is, the desire we have, what we really need is to be shown love and to hear that we're loved. It's two things, I spent most of my life with my parents, especially my dad, feeling like he didn't really love me, didn't really care, didn't really show it. And it took me a long time to realize that, actually he does, but it's in the way he does it doesn't register to me as love. And he doesn't say he loves me because that's something that might be beyond his not vocal capacity, but it's not something he ever learned how to do. As humans, I think what we want to hear that we're loved, and we want to be shown that we're loved. There's two things I think is really important for us. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I've got a little boy, he's 16 months. So it's something I'm having to really remember on a daily basis. And I guess a question kind of coming back to the breath is like, I know maybe the answer to this is obvious, is like, how does the breath allow us to show love more widely? Because, sometimes we're programmed into very narrow ways of loving, especially in relationship or with our children. Like, how does the breath enable us to just widen our range of being able to be loving?
I have my own theory about that. I first of all, I would put forward the premise that the breath is a supernatural force. And so if we're willing to accept the breath as a supernatural force, then it becomes quite easy to understand. But to substantiate that it's a supernatural force is also very easy, because it's written in every religious document that it has supernatural power. There are physiological aspects that like I said, in Sussex, Sussex University, they're now proving these things. What I've found, and where the most instant awarenesses occur in the breathwork world, are when we use our conscious mind to breathe, and we embrace this superconscious, this superpower, unconditionally, like not with need, not with expectation, not with we can use intention, but we also need to let go of the intention with every breath. Otherwise, it becomes expectation again. So to define the difference between expectation and expectancy. So it's like you're waiting for that first raindrop and you don't know where it's going to land. That's expectancy. You're waiting for the rain because your crops need water. That's expectation. So if I can be in this unconditional state of being, I'm going to accept whatever happens from this greater source that's coming into me. And if I allow it to go through my conscious being and into my subconscious, when those three things are in the same space, that's really where the alchemy occurs. And you see instant healings, from physiological ones to psychological, spiritual, emotional. They can be instant healings, from seeing one woman who lost sight in one eye in a breathwork, her sight came back. Some extraordinary people who had chronic pain or illnesses, stage 4 cancer that's been turned around with breathwork practices. There are many, many things. And I don't want to say I do believe breath is the best medicine, but I'm not saying that breathe and you'll be fine. There are other conditions that need to be fulfilled, and the irony is it's unconditional. It's like as soon as we introduce our need for the healing to occur, it puts it into the realms of doubt. If we just accept this is what is, and we breathe unconditionally, and we allow the breath to do its work, then it very often happens. What is definitely happens every time, and I remember someone said this to me back in the 90s, and I thought that's a very suspicious thing to say. They were from the breathwork world, and they said, you always get exactly what you need. And I thought, well, come on already. That's a bit steep. That's a big claim. But I can't say I've ever seen it otherwise. I think we always do get what we need. Sometimes we didn't know that we needed it, and it might have been too impactful or too ample, too magnificent in a way for us to be able to grasp it. But when that's happened, I've noticed that that's so people can grow into it. And like what you were saying about your dad, it's almost mathematical that it needs to be that way. If evolution is going to be served, there comes a moment we're going to have to outgrow our parents. And that means we're going to know things that they don't know. And if we're in our child mind, that's unfair, because why don't they know it? They should know. They're the ones who taught me. That should be, or, he should be able to say he loves me. But actually, the process of life says that it's quite likely we're going to have to change our parents' nappies, if all goes well. So there's got to be a time in life that this transition really occurs, that we can grow into our own ability to respond to the world and to have that agency that the breath and other things bring too.
Like an individuation from our parents and family system.
Yeah. I remember I went to a tarot reader in Milan like 40 years ago. I think I was about 32 or something, and she pulled out the father card, and she said, "I've got two things to tell you about your dad. One's good news and one's not so good news." And I said, "Okay, let me have it." She said, "Which do you want first?" I said, "I'll take the good news." Well, I'll take the good news. So she said, "Your dad wants you to excel him in every way possible. He really sees you as an unlimited power that can go way beyond anything that he's ever accomplished." Take a breath with that. Yes, thank you. I like that. And so what's the other part then? And she said, "He's going to do everything he can to stop you. And he's helping you by doing that." And that was like, okay, got it. Got the message.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just digesting that, because a lot of people hear that and be like, those two things can't be true. Like, no, actually, it's a bit like, and it's a bit like training someone for boxing. You hit them, so they get tougher. You hit them so they learn to move, and you do surprise things to them so their instincts a bit more refined and the reactions get better. And it might be to an onlooker, you'd be like, that doesn't look like you're helping them, but actually.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's a little bit like what you said about our wounding and trauma earlier. It's like, when we look back at it, from where we're often standing here, we're like, that was horrible. I wish that didn't happen to me. But from another lens, we'd be like, well, that's made me who I am today. So many of the great practitioners across different fields of therapy and so forth, they came to do the learning they did, or the wisdom they gained, because of the pain that they experienced that they wanted to do something about, or they didn't want other people to experience.
Yeah, I heard a talk by Mo Godat, and he was, I think, number 2 in Google, and he did a survey. He wrote a book about happiness, and he did a survey of 12,000 people, I think, and he said, "I offer to erase all of your trauma." And over 98% said, "I'll keep it, thanks. Because if I lose the trauma, I've lost all the growth, I've lost all the new friends I had, my whole life direction would reverse and go back to where it was." I think there is a journey. Part of our human journey is to accept trauma as our teacher. And on an even deeper level, for those that have abused us, part of our human journey, and perhaps superhuman journey, is to actually thank our abuser. That there can come a point in our evolution that we can look to our abuser and say, I know this doesn't let you off the hook, but if you hadn't done what you'd done, I would not have had the great opportunities that I've had in life. And that's why I talked about forgiveness being a different subject before. That's where we can really build our muscle. That you spoke of the individuation before too. So if we can really move towards compassion for the world abusers, that's where we're going to create change and a difference.
Yeah. I feel often like we're living in a world, sometimes it feels like there's a real shortage of compassion. We've really gone to these extremes of, and I don't know if it's something you experience. I've talked to a few guests about this, where feeling like so many people are so angry all of the time, or so quick to anger, or quick to only view everybody through a very negative lens. It just seems to be this real shortage of compassion, and this quickness to anger, and this quickness to look at people from extremes of severe, personality disorders, like everyone's a narcissist. And, there seems to be this trend that's been going on for a number of years that swings people this way.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a ways to go, huh?
We do. As one more question I'd like to ask you before we wrap up. You've lived a long and varied life, just from the conversation we've had now, and you've experienced many different experiences, whether those are altered state experiences, life experiences, fatherhood, travel, business, starting mobile business, starting movements, running huge breath works, learning about trauma, the breath, and all these bits and pieces. What would you say your most profound lessons have been that you've learned about being a human being, or around healing, around connection?
It's a cliche. It's going to be a cliche that it's an inside out job, that the connection I can have with you is definitively controlled by the connection I can have with myself. The love I can share with you is dependent on how much I'm able to share with myself. That is what keeps us authentic. That's what makes sure that what we share in the outer world with other people is concurrent with who we are. It's not beyond our measure. Something that happened a lot in my 30s, I see in clients that are of that age group, is that a common affliction, I would say, is that we lack distinction between our aspiration and what's really true. So we say, I'm like this too, I'm like that, and I feel, but actually what people are often saying is, this is the way I'd like to be, and I want you to accept me for the way that I'd like to be, and not pay attention to who I actually am. And this isn't just restricted to the 30s. I see people my age doing the same thing. But I think it comes into play in early to midlife. And we're in such desperate condition that we've got this patchwork quilt that we've put together to show to the world. And we really need to disrobe. We really need to learn that our sovereignty is our birthright, and that by admitting we don't have it, we're closer to it than by pretending that we do. And that sovereignty is the result of a deep commitment to inner work. And it's not that it's ever going to end. It's not. But if we can keep burnishing that commitment and bouncing back, then there was a very famous saying from 2,000 years ago that said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And I think we get to do that with ourselves too. We're all doing the best we can, and my God, it's a great playground, and it's got its bumps and scrapes too. But so I think my greatest learning was to turn inside, like I said earlier, bring it into my laboratory so I can actually do something about this.